Do you feel as if you don't belong? Do you know you were meant for something more? Well, you were. Knowledge of who you are and where you really are from is within your reach. Join Janet Carol Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin as they search for the answers as they open up the Stargate to the cosmos.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Stargate to the Cosmos. I'm your host, Janet Carol Lessin. I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin. Our producer is Debra DeFranco, and you're listening to Revolution Radio Studio B. Today we have two guests, Hildegard Gmeiner and Shelia Seppi, and we're going to be talking about walk-ins and what are walk-ins, how does one become a walk-in, and also we're going to be talking about near-death experiences and contact with other dimensional intelligence and extraterrestrials and all kinds of interesting things. I have a long description and bios and pictures on aquarianradio.com. I invite you to go over there and look at the show. And let's see what else I want to say. Dr. Lessin, what would you like to say? Just say hi.
Hi.
My husband's a comic, stand-up comic. Okay, so let's start with Hildegard. We met Hildy in Canada at a conference, and she's just an amazing, bright light. And then we had her on our show a couple times, but it's been a couple years. So how you doing, Hildegard? What's new in your life?
Well, I am very well, Janet. Thank you so much, Janet Lessing. And Sasha, how are you? Long time no hear. I'm doing really great. And it's a privilege and honor to be here with you again today on Aquarian Radio and be with my friend and famous author, Shelia Seppi, to talk about the walk-in conference. So, yeah, I'm very excited to be here. So thank you for having me.
I just want to remind both of you, please send me the link for the conference, and I'll put that on my show page so I can help promote it. I realize I don't have it here, so if you after the show, send it to me. So who is putting on this conference? Is that your production or Sheila's or a group?
It's Sheila's, and it's in collaboration with our dear friend Neil Gower from Portal to Ascension. So portal.org is where people who are interested can go and register and learn all about it. But maybe, Sheila, you want to take it away from here and speak to that because it's your brainchild. You put it all together.
Well, if you don't mind, we'll pass the mic, the talking stick to Sheila, and then we can come back to you.
Absolutely.
So, Sheila, welcome to the show. Welcome back. You were here, I guess, in October, I think.
Yes, I was.
Yes.
Pardon me?
If you want to tell us about the event and a little bit about yourself, we'll go back to Hildegard and get her bio, but if you want to start with who you are and how this came to be, and, you know, a little brief of how you became a walk-in and what is a walk-in, because that's what this conference is about.
Well, when I became a walk-in, I had absolutely no idea what walk-ins are. And if it had not happened to me, I wouldn't have believed that something like this was even possible. In 1999, I was a very sick person. I had been diagnosed with bone cancer, brain tumors, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. I walked with a cane. I had erythema nodosum and sarcoidosis and just about every autoimmune disease that was out there. I was a very sick person. I also had a very firm belief system. I had a very narrow viewpoint. I knew nothing of the metaphysical realm, and I was not interested in learning anything about it. It was just not on my radar screen at that time. And so I went to bed a very sick person, and what felt like around 7 o'clock the next morning, felt like someone reached down, grabbed me by the hair of the head. I sat bolt right up in bed, and it was like lightning ran through my body. And unbeknownst to me, that's when the walk-in happened. Now, I had no explanation for what this was. I had no explanation for all of the clairvoyance and clairaudience and clairsentient, all these gifts that started flooding me. I had no idea what it was. And because I had no idea, I thought that I was having a psychotic break. I thought the illnesses, the marriage, having 3 kids, who knows, the combination. But I thought that I was literally on my way to a doctor to be committed to a mental institution. I had no other explanation for that. But I fortunately, within 3 months, I had left the marriage. In another 3 months, I'd moved to a different state and found my first spiritual teacher, who ended up being of Hopi lineage. And together, we walked this path of integration. And today I am so grateful. We're still very, very close. And as a matter of fact, she's a walk-in and will be at the conference as well. But this was 20 years ago when this happened. A lot has happened since then. Career changes, new marriage, new state, new business, all of these types of things. And I was told in October of, about 2 years ago, actually, that I needed to write this book and that I needed to tell my story. And as I started putting it down, there were more and more truths that started really flooding my mind. And the more I talked about it, the more I remembered. I had hypnosis sessions that really helped me recall some of the fine details. And through all of this, the book Walk-Ins, The Cosmology of the Soul, was birthed. Now, once I got my story written and I was reading, it's like, nobody's going to believe this. There has to be other people out there. And so I really started seeking out people of like kind. First off, I wanted community. I wanted to know I wasn't the only person out there. I wasn't the only one that had these feelings and these experiences. And I found some of the most beautiful souls ever out there, with Hildegard being one of them. And everyone's story is very unique to them. It's unique to how they're walking out their mission. It's unique in where they came from. But the one thing that we all have in common is community and wanting to help others. And so this conference was really birthed out of our desire to continue to have community. We spent a lot of time on the phone and spent lots of time on Zoom and Skype and different mediums talking with all the walk-ins during the publication of the book. And we really just didn't want that to stop. And so we started meeting on a weekly basis. And I'd had an idea about trying to put a conference together and threw it out to the group, and everybody was all for it. And so together we have created this Walk-Ins in the Cosmology of the Soul conference. Now, this conference is going to be held in January, on January the 8th, 9th, and 10th. It's going to start at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And for the entire 3 days, it's only $88. And the beautiful thing about working in partnership with Neil Gar, who Portal to Ascension is his birth child and project, is you can purchase the ticket, but you don't have to be on those 3 days that it's showing. You can really watch this conference at any time, start and stop as many times as you want. So, as long as that conference is up, people have access to it. And they can register by going portaltoascension.org. Now, we have 22 speakers that are coming, and yes, they're going to share their experience and their walk-in experience and what their mission is here on this planet, but they're also going to share the passions of their heart that has really brought them to where they are in their life. Some people are like animal communicators. Other people are channels. Some people work with others to help wake them up. Some people are authors. Some people are life coaches. And so they're going to bring their cumulative experience. And what's so exciting about that is if someone doesn't resonate with one person's story, it's very possible that they could resonate with someone else's, because I believe that at this time on the planet, we have so many walk-ins that are flooding the planet that a lot of people are walk-ins themselves, and they may just not know it. Because traditionally, like Hildegard and I are what's called the traditional walk-ins. We are the soul exchange. One soul out and another soul in. But as I started doing the research for the book, I found out that there were other types of soul experiences. And some of those are soul infusions, where someone is bringing in more aspect of their higher self. They may bring in an angelic component. They may bring in an Arcturian component. Who knows what they're going to bring in? Then there's what's called a soul braid, and that's where two souls inhabit the body. Now, typically in a soul braid, first off, both souls are aware of each other, and one is in control at one time and another one is in control at another. And a soul braid comes in to help someone through a particular situation, and they will blend together eventually to make one soul. Then we have what's called a soul overlay, and this is when a soul comes in and basically attaches itself and enshrouds the soul, kind of like a neoprene suit. And it will help the soul to rejuvenate, to heal. Maybe the soul needs to leave and have some type of a rest experience. But the overlay will hold that space for the soul to do whatever it is that they need to do. They may just be there to help give them support during a project or during a particular difficult time. But typically the overlay will leave, and if it doesn't, it will meld with the natal soul, which is the original soul to the body. Then there's what's called soul jumpers, and a lot of people have experienced this. I'm finding they will have a walk-in that comes in and then it leaves, and another one comes in and then it leaves, and another one comes in and it leaves. And so the last kind of walk-in that I've been able to identify is what's called the multidimensional soul layering walk-in, and this is when someone comes into this life and they bring with them not just a single aspect of their soul, but they bring very distinct multiple aspects of their soul. So at any given time, one particular piece of the soul will be in charge and it will recede, and then another one will come forward and it will have its experience and then it recedes. But the reality of it is we are so multifaceted, and it's just amazing to me at the types of experiences that people do have when it comes to the soul, because sometimes people will have spiritual awakenings and they'll think that it is a walk-in, when in fact it's actually a spiritual awakening and they still have the natal soul, or they'll have like a profound Kundalini experience. Now sometimes the soul awakening, the spiritual awakening and the Kundalini will happen as a result of a walk-in, but a lot of times it's because that person has been doing their work and they have reached a certain frequency in their life that they're able to have that experience. And so we're going to talk about all of this and so much more during this conference, and I really hope that people who come, they can visit my website also. That's walkins.org, WALK-INS.org. And they can find the bios for all of the individuals that's going to be attending this conference and their contact information. So if Hildegard says something during this conference that people are like, oh my gosh, I've just got to talk to her, that's exactly my experience, they have a place that they can go to be able to do that.
Fascinating. I have a lot of questions, but Dr. Lessin, do you have any question right now?
Well, I'm when you've left a soul identification for another, what happens to the one you left?
Okay, we call those typically a walkout. Now, one of the beautiful things about walk-ins and all of these other types of things is there is a soul agreement in place that this will happen. So basically, the soul that walks out has completed its mission on Earth. And sometimes that mission on the human realm is like, well, wait a minute, what happened? How did this person, why is this walk-in here? What happened to the other person? That other person is going off and doing the rest of their mission, because we have in place what's called pre-birth plans, and we meet with our guides, our teachers, multiple aspects of ourselves, and we develop these plans that are in place for us. And I also believe we have certain exit strategies in place. So we might have, if life is going the wrong way for us. Maybe at age 7, we have a possible accident that could occur, and then another one at age 20 and another one at 50. So we set up these exit strategies for us. Now, when we're in third dimensional reality, there's no way that we would do this. And then sometimes I even smack myself on the head. It's like, oh man, what was I thinking on the other side? This is really crazy. So everything is in agreement, and it's a copacetic. So whereas I walked into the body of a 38-year-old woman, I did not need to have the birth, the childhood, the adolescent, the young adult experience, nor did the soul that walked out need to have the older adult and elderhood experience. So it's really a mutual exchange.
Question of mine. There's a lot of people I work with. They talk about how they have alters in the psychotherapy we do. It's called voice dialogue facilitation, and people have subpersonalities, and it's familiar. So, and then there's all kinds of variations on this theme. So, what's the difference in your opinion, and how do you work with the different aspects of these things, like the alters, the subpersonalities, How do you deal with that? How do you know what's really an alter and a walk-in, or somebody that's coming in for a little bit, or is there any difference? Is it the same thing?
In many cases, it is an aspect of the initial soul that comes in. But the things that you're talking about more relate to mental health and stability. Sometimes people say, well, isn't that just a split personality? Well, no, actually it's not. Because like in my case, when I came in, I didn't even know the family that I was with. I had no love for my husband. I couldn't figure out why I was married to this man. Immediately I loved my children, my mom, my dad. I had those, kinships. But honestly, my mom had to set me down at one point and have a talk with me because she was concerned that I was exhibiting early signs of Alzheimer's due to the fact that I could not remember the people or the places or the events that she continued to talk with me about. And I finally had to tell her that I was a walk-in. And she's like, that makes so much sense. The same thing with my daughter. I had first off, I was immediately healed. The second thing is I had a totally different personality. The third thing is I had a lack of memory, which for me, because my background was in psychology, I thought I was having a psychotic break, a dissociative moment. I figured there was something traumatic that I had experienced, and I was blocking things out, and this subpersonality had emerged. And that's exactly why I sought out my spiritual teacher, because she was a spiritual counselor. And I was convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that I was having a mental breakdown. And so I have been there. I have questioned all of these things, as have most of the people who have these experiences, because, we're taught that life is a certain way. And we have all these dogmas, even as a child, all these belief systems that are fed to us about the way things are. And for something like a walk-in to occur, that dialogue never happens with most families. Now, it happens in my family, but in a lot of families, that does not happen. People are not even aware of a walk-in. So, we have a lot of genetic memory. We have a lot of genetic imprinting that even as a walk-in, when we come into the body, we have to begin to overcome that.
Okay. I think at this point I want to bring in Hildegard, because she's got an incredible story. Hildegard, do you want to tell our listeners, and Debra DeFranco, she's never heard it before, and our listeners, and then we'll come back to you later, Sheila. Hildegard, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay. Please tell us your story. It's fascinating.
Yeah, what Sheila was saying makes so much sense. Like let me just preface what I'm going to say with this. I had an experience that set my life upside down and sideways. Everything changed. And I'm going into the details in a little while. And I had no recollection of much. But I knew that I had two missions in life: to raise these children to the light. I had 3 little children under 5 at the time. And there was going to be a time when I would have to tell my story. Now here's the story. And all of what I just said didn't make sense at the time when I got this. This is kind of like you remember your children being born or some significant event in your life. You just never forget. And these were the sentences that were in my mind. This was my guiding principle from the moment on. But let me take you back for a minute. Who was I? Who was Hildegard that had in her early 30s that couple of near-death experiences, during one of which something really interesting happened? So imagine this stay-at-home mom in the suburbs of a big city here in Toronto, Ontario, could have been anywhere. And I'm at home looking after my children. And one day, this little one is running towards the road, and I'm trying to run after him. And before I could reach him, everything went black. It was like a theater curtain closing, and the image of the road and the little one running towards it disappeared. And the next thing, I saw an ambulance coming from the distance, far away off the highway. The ambulance was just coming off the highway into the subdivision. The neighbors are running together. And there are the 2 children, the older ones, the little one held by a woman wearing a pink business suit. And I see the emergency people carry that body onto a gurney and putting it in the truck. And I'm screaming on the top of my head, "What are you doing? I am here. What's going on?" And no sooner had I tried to express that, again, a different scene. I am in this incredibly bright space. In the distance, I see a point of light. And my first impulse was, God, I cover my eyes. It's so bright. And as I'm trying to do so, I realize there is no body. There are no hands, no arms, nothing. What's going on? I'm dead. And for a split second, I was very happy that I was dead. Why? After the birth of my 3rd child, I lost rapid weight without trying. And I had chronic fatigue. These were all the labels similar to what Sheila was just saying. Chronic fatigue syndrome, irritable bowel, or early menopause. My hair went gray overnight, more or less. And I had acidity in my stomach. I had all sorts of health issues. However, no proper diagnosis could be given. And after having had collapse on an escalator in a department store about 6 months before, during which I had no memory, I have no memory of what happened, I knew something was wrong with my body. And I had been going from doctor to kind of figure out what is going on and what can we do about it. Because I'm a mother of 3 little kids, it's not very practical to be lying on the sidewalk all the time. Nobody could help me then. So I'm in this point of light thinking, I'm so happy. No more doctors, nobody telling me I'm making all of this up. I'm dead, I'm happy. And then the next thought was, I can't be dead. Stop it. And I hear myself yelling, and at the same time thinking, how can I hear? How can I think? How can I see if I don't have eyes? How can I feel if I don't have a body to feel with? What's going on? And in the distance, in this point of bright light in the far distance, there was this voice. And I felt, yeah, I want to be like that. You're making a lot of sense. I want to be like you. And then I thought I want to go there. And before I knew it, I was there. I had this incredible cashmere sweater kind of hug experience. I felt so much comfort, so much love, like I had never experienced before in my life. And there was a conversation, no image, no picture, nothing visual. It all happened on a feeling and telepathic communication basis. And I remember agreeing. I made a deal. Okay, great. I'll go back and I'll raise these children to the light. And even though while still in the light, I'm thinking, I'm not understanding what that means. And then I'll tell my story. Okay, great. That's a deal. I'm doing it. And then in the next moment, I found myself in a hospital bed and the doctors were trying to explain to me that this is what had happened. You'd collapsed. Tell us where you were. And when I would explain this to them, that didn't go down too well. Now, in one of these experiences, I found myself in this very light again. However, this time I had a white body, completely white, and I was lying on what looked like a massage table or an operating table, and there were 12 people around me, all of them with platinum colored, silverish looking, I would think platinum color, probably shoulder length hair. They had the purest skin. Newborn baby skin doesn't come close. No flaw in the skin. They had almond shaped eyes, bigger than ours, maybe twice the size of our eyes. And there were 4 people by my right side, 4 by my left, 2 to my feet, by my feet, and 2 behind my head. And they were wearing what looked like an overall kind of yoga, kind of very close fitting overalls. What was unique about the overalls, they sparkled like a very expensive opal when hit by sunlight. Rainbow colors, very interesting. And again, I'm lying there surrounded by these 12 beings, and I'm feeling, like a child in mother's arms. It was just so nice. So much love, such positive experience. And the person closest to my right shoulder is looking into my eyes. I look into that person's eyes. I will just say it was a man. I don't know. I couldn't really tell. Female, male, androgynous, no idea. Yet the person was clearly speaking with me because I found myself agreeing with what was said. And I'm going to tell you what I remember that was said. But what struck me as strange was that the features were just like human features in the face. You have 2 eyes, nose, and a mouth, but the mouth was not moving while the person was communicating with me. And I'm going, how come I can do that? And what I was told was that I was a consciousness scientist from Andromeda galaxy, and I had taken on this mission to be stepped down from another dimension into this 3D physical dense world. And I was going to have my support system over time. So my energy had to be stepped down so it would fit into this broken physicality that was waiting for me on the 3D world. And then I, over time, was going to heal that body my way. And then in so doing, I would actually embody another dimensional energy and ground it onto the planet. And I would have to be the expression of unconditional love and patience and tolerance and kindness. And yet I would have to also be highly functional. Something along those terms was said. And I was going to come from time to time for upgrades. And I didn't know what that meant. Now, awake back in an emergency room hospital gurney, I would wake up one day telling the emergency doc on the right side of the gurney, well, I'm an Andromeda, come from Andromeda, and I'm a conscious scientist, and I'm going to anchor higher vibration here, and blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly I'm realizing, what? Who are these people? Where am I? And I was totally panic-stricken because I didn't remember the husband of 10 years. This hospital setting struck me as very weird and backward. And then I heard this doctor talk across my body to the guy on the left, saying, well, we need to give her something to calm her down. She's clearly out of it. And I just remember saying, oh, no. No injections, prescriptions, please. And then I'm in the car with this man driving on a 16-lane highway, as there are here around Toronto, thinking nobody is in these bodies. There's nobody there driving these cars. Wow, take me out of here. I don't want to be here. It was as if I was caught in a body looking out through the eyes into a world that was completely foreign. When we came home and the door opened and there are these two little kids, so 3.5-year-old and a 5-year-old, and a babysitter, I guess, holding this baby. Initially I was frightened, and then suddenly there was this overwhelming love for these kids. And I couldn't compute what had happened. But I knew that because of them, I had to figure this one out. And the first couple of months, even I would say 2 years at least, were crazy because I had this inner voice that would say to me, and I call this inner voice Louis Marr, because at some point I thought I was just losing my mind. And of course my partner at the time, as I was trying to explain to him what happened, he is my best friend, the love of my life. You know, we've come to North America to advance his career, and then we were going to go back to Europe. So there's no extended family. There is nobody that knew me all my life other than him. And he didn't want any of this. You can't constantly interrupt. I'm in important business meetings. It doesn't work for me. The hospital's calling and say, is so-and-so your wife? Are you next of kin? This is just not working. Stop doing this. And I suddenly realized that, oh my God, I am on my own in this. How am I gonna do that? So the integration of getting this new understanding, and initially I had more understanding of where I had come from than of the life I'd lived before here in the 3-dimensional body, until that gradually switched over. So I was over time, with the help of a journal book, because I doubted that I could make decisions, because I was confused by what was going on there. Outside of me, none of it makes sense. I didn't understand it. I listened to the radio. And the more I learned about what was going on here, I'm thinking, this is also contradictory. They're talking about health and wellness and health care, but what I have experienced, it didn't make sense to me, because health was somebody would go into a specific facility and they would be giving a treatment, and we could rebuild bones, and we could heal souls, and we could do all these things. And suddenly I was disconnected from that knowledge. And here, even things that were sold to me as food, like I'm in a carbon-based body, I journaled ferociously in my book once, and I will eventually get back to a crystalline body as the body gets strong enough to harbor higher vibration. And that meant I had to change everything about what the walk out, as Shelia so aptly labeled it, had been accustomed to. You know, dairy, meat, potatoes, black forest cakes, you know, the typical German diet that I had grown up with, did not agree with me anymore. I could not use the shampoos that were in the bathroom that I had been accustomed to before, apparently. I found myself throwing stuff out that my husband loved and enjoyed, and he obviously, rightfully so, was very upset about that. So in very practical terms, the integration of that new, today I can call it software, that was not going without a glitch. And you have to bear in mind, when that happened in the early 90s, we didn't have internet. I did not have, in the community that I was surrounded by, at least at the time, we didn't have words that would distinguish hardware, software, the World Wide Web. There was no terminology that I was capable of using to express what had happened to me. So how do you express something that doesn't fit into the material worldview? You are only physicality. You die and that's it. And my religious upbringing was as such in the Catholic Church that you die and you either go to heaven and you go to hell. So that there were other intelligences, that there was life in other dimensions, or maybe in different planets, different constellations, galaxies. That was not part of the paradigm that this machinery, call it my body, labeled as Hildegard, had functioned in for over 3 decades. So now suddenly I had experienced myself formless, shapeless, totally disconnected from everything that had given me a frame of reference and some sense of security. And then coming back in the body with heightened senses, so I could hear things that I couldn't hear before. As a child, I remember as a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, I could hear the trees talk and the grass grow, and the cows would interact with me. I grew up on a farm. The horses most definitely would speak to me. So I had these abilities. But then after one incident where my father then said, "Don't you dare telling this guy is not trustworthy. What do you know? You're only a little child." That's, I guess, when I decided to shut down the last physical sense perceptual tools I had. And from that on, I just wanted to please and ended up being a workaholic and wanted to please everybody and got my body to a point of complete collapse. I was only, I would imagine, less than 100 pounds. I don't know exactly how much I weighed. And my normal body weight before pregnancy was about 130, 140. And so obviously I'd run down my physical machinery to the point that the lights would go out. And during that near-death experience, I then had a new software come in. And when I met Shelia and she called me and asked me to tell my story, oh my God, it was just unbelievable. I was so happy I had somebody in my life now that had experienced the same thing, because over the years I had learned to be quiet about it. I learned to integrate. It took probably close to 10 years to really get in step with living in this planet and finding enjoyment being in the physicality and whatever. I still knew what I knew and I still had contact. And I didn't share that with people. I wrote it in my journal book. I took from it what I needed to have. I learned how guidance worked from within. I had been conditioned to focus outside and would do what people would tell me to do on the outside. And now I learned to do things guided from my inner wisdom, following my inner voice. And however, had not really spoken publicly about this experience after, having to leave my husband, having to take my kids and run, and having had all sorts of challenges to get into what one might call a normal life. I decided not to talk about this. And I thought, well, if I've been able to raise my children, we will see. But my focus is live a normal life. Nobody needs to know about this until 2016. And in 2016, something happened that had me end up speaking at a conference in west of Toronto, about 2 hours away from here. And I ended up standing next to a gentleman at this conference. I just went there to observe, even though somebody said, you need to tell your story there. People need to hear this. And I thought, well, I'll just go there to observe. But it so happened that I stood next to a man, his name is Grant Cameron. And he apparently was the organizer of what he called the Experiences Day. And when I heard the man speak up front, I felt this is maybe a safe space to speak about this. I didn't see anybody with raw eggs and tomatoes, so how challenging could it be? You know, it seemed to be a very kind crowd. And so I told my story. And what was most amazing, I had probably 5 minutes. I think you know more now than I told the story to the crowd there, and there were probably 500-600 people in the room. The people coming to me later on were then telling me what happened to them. And I gradually walked up to the idea, and I think that's when I met you, Janet and Sasha.
Yes, we were listening to you when you did your premiere.
You listened to me. Anyway, thank you. I didn't even realize that. So
yeah, we were front row center.
That's when I thought, okay, maybe I need to tell my story eventually. And so thanks to Sheila, part of my story is in her book now. And I have been privileged to participate in the monthly get-togethers with walk-ins from all around the globe. And I think the time has come to also share my story, which is probably going to happen this 2021, because I think the beauty of my walk-in experience, and as challenging as it was to integrate the first couple of years, the beauty of it is that I learned to trust my inner communication. And I think when we learn to know ourselves, and when we learn to differentiate the language of our own soul, let's call it software maybe, for lack of a better term, and I experienced that software upgrade, so there was a little bit of adjustment necessary. But then once I got the sensation of it, and to me it's a feeling. Yes, I'm clairaudient, I'm clairvoyant. I sometimes see pictures and images, and I recognize what level of consciousness a person is operating on when they're speaking. And then somebody come to me with an issue and say, I heard you can help me with this. I would get these pictures, almost like a very slow motion film, and I see these pictures and I would describe them to the person. And I would say, so what has this Italian looking grandmother to do with any of this? And then the person starts to cry or says, oh my God, guess what? And so it seems that I'm triggering awareness in people. And that is why I call it intuitive awareness consulting, which I want to get more into now in the times that follow. Because I think we are all having that software at a time release keys in us, that at a certain point in time, these keys open up at the speed at which the human being then is able to integrate more awareness into their life, much like I had experienced it. The guidance from the Andromedans did not happen by a massive download where now I have all this information and I don't know how to incorporate it. It's not like that. For me, it's more, there are little breadcrumbs. For instance, I was contemplating buying a car. Should I take a loan or should I pay cash for it? And I was contemplating buying an older car and pay cash for it. And apparently that was not going to be to my highest good. So what happened? In one morning, I had a truck run me almost off the highway, had a big sign on it, Chrysler Canada. I'm then in a grocery store. trying to pay for my groceries, and the person in front of me is wearing a bomber jacket and it says Chrysler Canada on it. Then I'm going to school to pick up my kids, and a person gets out of the pickup truck, opens a double spread newspaper, and I'm staring at the back, and it says Chrysler Canada. And then I hear a laughter inside of me. It's almost like somebody standing beside me laughing, saying, "Sweetheart, do you get the message?" I took my kids and I'm going to the local Chrysler dealer where I had seen the van. And I said to him, "Here, listen, this is a situation. I'm not sure how this is going to fly, but I decided to take a loan regardless. I just taken out a big mortgage. I'm buying a house in the country. Hence, I need to get a reliable car, but I didn't want to take a car loan." And the guy says to me, "Well, we can fix that problem." So this is how guidance works for me all the time. It's subtle. Somebody said to me once, God, call it guidance, call it the angels, call it the Andromedans. Guidance works in very subtle ways, or the universe guides you. You need to just up your receiver so you can recognize the messages that come to us in our life, and the path will evolve whenever you are ready. The guideposts will be there, and the decisions you make, trusting your inner guidance, always are the right ones, and the logic will eventually catch up.
When you finish your thought, we want to ask you a couple of questions.
Go
Sasha,
ahead.
you were waiting patiently.
Yes, this ability to tune into other people and what their thoughts are. And so I'm really interested in when you were shut down by your father. Was his motive in to protect you, to not have you say this, or were there other things he didn't want you to talk about? It seems like that was such an amazing moment where you shut down and turned into a pleaser. What was going on for him? What made that terrible thing happen?
Well, I don't think it was terrible from his end. It was not intended to harm me either. The situation was that he, a farmer, wanted to buy machinery together with other farmers from the village. The machine being very expensive, so they had to pool their money to purchase this harvester, I think it was. And I, as a little child, remember observing the three men talking. And this one man had this reddish color around him. And it made me feel very uncomfortable and scared. And I instantly felt that something was wrong. There was something going wrong in that partnership, and my dad was going to get hurt, and he was going to get angry, and I wanted to protect him from that. Mm-hmm. But what I'm telling you now, I was not aware of as a little child. This just came all together as I began to try and figure out what happened to me, what is going on. I didn't know that I had a walk-in experience until probably 10 years later, when I had access to internet the first time, and I came across a presentation by a gentleman named Alex Collier. Alex Collier had and has done a lot with Andromedans, apparently. And I never had the privilege of meeting him, but I do know there are shows on the internet. He does regular shows and speaks about Andromeda, and he apparently had been on Andromedan ships, and his life has not been easy from what I've gathered from what he has told publicly. But that was the very first time I heard that weird word again, Andromeda. I had no idea what it was. It was in my head. I journaled it in my journal book because during the early years I spent a lot of time registering at a university at some point, only to gain access to their libraries Not that I wanted to get a PhD in anything. I took social science and French just to have a card to see what was written about people having these weird experiences, because there was no literature that I could get to until I got to a book. I think it was Montgomery, what's her first name again? Ruth Montgomery, Strangers Among Us.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was Christmas when I got my hands on that book. Suddenly I felt things made sense again. But back to my dad, it took me years and years to figure out that Dad had no access. They grew up in the war. And my grandparents in World War I, and my parents were children in World War II. They were traumatized beyond description, so they did not have access to feelings the way I had. They had to shut their feelings down to survive. It was all about survival for them all their life. So they ran on adrenaline most of the time. And when I figured out that I had done the same thing, I had become such a workaholic, doing, looking good, accomplishing, having something to show for at the end of the day, that actually had I had burned down my body. I was destroying my body from the inside out, because anybody who knows a little bit of the fight and flight response, you don't digest food. You don't reproduce your cells. You certainly have tunnel vision and can't get the big picture and see on what's going on around you. And even if somebody wants to help you, you perceive that person as the enemy, because the brain is switched into defense mode. And so to me, I think it was about in my mid-40s already when I realized that my dad did not mean any harm. He just did not have the ability to see what I saw. And how was I becoming aware of that? When my 4-year-old daughter came home from kindergarten one day, threw her backpack in the corner. I will never go there again. It was such a red day. And my ears perked up, and I said to her, what happened? And she explained to me, like little arms by her waist, saying, Mom, you are the adult. You should know this by now. There was so much anger and lying going on. I don't want to go ever there again. Nobody was nice today. I am so upset. I'll never go there. And she gave me this grand lecture on the colors about people and things. And she gave me the lecture that, remember when I'm at the first river and you say I shouldn't go there by myself? Well, Pumbi and, Carrot are with me. Besides, the dog is there. And I'm going, and who are they? Well, can't you see? Look at them. They're right here. So my kids opened my eyes to their ability to dial into different vibrations. Their spectrum of observation is so much wider than we have, and I shut that ability down. And I believe it's thanks to my now 4 grown brilliant children, who along the way were my master teachers, that I was able to gradually open access to those abilities again. And I think I still have ways.
Was the guy cheating? What turned out with the tractor?
Oh, I want to ask a question. Okay. Go ahead. Finish your thread and I'll get mine after me. So what happened with the guy with the tractor that you had this sense about him? Was he indeed evil? Did he do weird things with
Well, I don't think evil, but I experienced in life that it was haying season and Dad went to his barn to pick up the machinery and it wasn't working. So he didn't do the maintenance over the winter as my dad would do if it was his turn to store the machinery. he made sure everything was in working order. If something was broken, he would go and repair the part, get the part, repair it, and then, let the others know this is what was broken, this is what it cost, whatever. And this is what, I don't know whether I had a vision, whether I was able to see that. I don't know. I just remember the red color and the anger. And I saw my dad angry a lot in conjunction to this machinery. And it only makes later on.
We're coming up to the top of the hour. Thank you for that. That's wonderful. And we're going to be taking a 4-minute break. So when we come back, we're going to let Debra ask some questions, and we're going to go back to Shelia. So what's your main focus that you want to do second half? Shelia, we're going to start with you. What do you want to talk about?
Hi. Well, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm also happy to talk about what I believe is coming down the pike for humanity.
Oh, that sounds great. Yes, so we will have questions, and then we'll hear about what's coming up. Okay, the music should be here any second now. You are listening to, what show is this? This is a Stargate to the Cosmos with Hildegard Gmeiner and Shelia Seppi, Jennifer Lessin, Dr. Sasha Lessin, and Debra DeFranco. We'll be back in 4 minutes.
And we'll be right back after this message.
Many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
The future is uncertain, I know this. Death is inevitable, I know this. But one thing is certain, as free men, it is our right to live unencumbered and in peace. And those times are quickly drawing to an end. And in these times, peace is certainly an illusion, and as the chains grow tighter, our ability to slip those chains increase incrementally with every passing moment. Inaction is no longer an option. It's time to raise our voices like a cacophony of thunder and lightning and tell the masters no more. And this is Nighthawk, and I say, for myself, no more. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, because the freedom is slipping away.
Hello, my name is Mr. Rowe. I am the host of Reality Extraction, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I utilize logic, intellect, and magic to methodically atomize, vivisect, analyze, examine, study, scrutinize, and extract an essence of reality from a fog of illusion and confusion. You can find me on Studio B every Thursday, 1700 hours Pacific Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern. No topic taboo, no subject too strange. I strive to take a neutral standpoint during the dissection of the topic at hand. That's Reality Extraction with Mr. Rowe on Revolution Radio.
Did you ever feel that things were not quite right? That everything was just ever so slightly askew?
Do you have, to paraphrase Morpheus, a splinter in your mind?
If you're interested in hearing the latest information about UFOs, the paranormal,
Ancient cultures and structures.
monatomic elements,
Longevity.
fantastic discoveries in science,
Downloaded to your brain.
then tune into us. Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Mackie.
And we are Shiny Side Out, Sundays 2 to 4 a.m. Eastern. See you then.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. All right. Thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Hello, and welcome back to Stargate to the Cosmos. I'm Janet Lessin with Dr. Sasha, Alex Lessin, Debra DeFranco is our producer. We're on Revolution Radio, Studio B. Our guests are Hildegard Gmeiner and Shelia Seppi. And before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind you to please go over to the donation button on revolution.radio and go up to the top left tab and make your one-time donation, or go to the Patreon button and make your recurring donation. And we do thank you very much for making these donations because they allow us to bring you these shows. So thank you very much. Dr. Lessin's still over there on the other side of the room, but I will continue. We wanted to go back into Sheila's story, and so we kind of left it. I wanted to know, you said that you came back in with awareness, let me find this, of your interdimensional, here. You came back in the body bringing your angelic, Pleiadian, Syrian, Arcturian matches, and Andromedan multidimensional self and lineage. And your strongest traits are of the Arcturians. So what is the configuration of the cosmos with all these beings? So you've had lives, or you have remembrances. Are these lives as vibrant and as your human life? Can you remember different details like you can in your human life? Could you explain that to us? How does that work?
Sure.
Are you there?
I am here. I was having difficulty unmuting. When I refer to these lifetimes, I have a sensation that goes along with it. And let me back up and tell you, when I first came in the body, I didn't know anything. And I literally had to grow into my knowing, because when a walk-in comes in, we bring knowledge, or like Hildegard said, sometimes we have breadcrumbs dropped and we pick one up at a time. But I think if we were able to remember everything at one time, it would literally fry our circuits. So for me, it was approximately 12 years after I walked in, and I was on my way. I was with a group, and we were going down to Chaco Canyon. And as I walked into my hotel room, I was told, lay down and journey now, because shamanic journey has been really my saving grace. It allows me to travel to other realms. It allows me to work more easily with my guides and angels, as I was first learning to integrate. And so I went and I laid down on the bed, and I had this journey, and this man came to me, and I'm like, well, what are you doing in my vision? And he started telling me that he was a new guide and he was going to be working with me. And then he said, I am Arcturian and you are Arcturian too. And then he just kind of faded away. Well, I got up, I called my husband because I was very excited. I wrote it all down and I started looking it up. And until that point, I did not know what an Arcturian was. The more I began to study about Arcturians and the attributes that they have, their scientific knowledge, their ability to work with light, sound, and frequency, their no nonsense, let's just get it done kind of attitude and work ethic, I really began to resonate with that. And the more that I opened up, the more I was able to remember. And then I had a past life regression with Barbara Lamb. And in this regression, she kind of confirmed to me things that I really knew, but at the time had not acknowledged, not just publicly, but even to myself. And it was discovered that I came from a collective. Some people come from a different dimension. Some people come from interdimensions. I was working interdimensionally on the Earth's crystalline grid, and I was part of a collective. And within this collective, I was the totality of my multidimensional self. And that multidimensional self did have within it the Palladian, the Arcturian, the Mantis, the Andromeda, and, a host of other things. I worked with the Christic energy. I found that I worked within and was part of the lineage of Thoth. And so did I have a memory of being a Syrian? No, I didn't. But as these truths were told to me, when I think of these lifetimes, I'm flooded with it's almost like different types of energy. So if I call on my Arcturian self, I use that in my healing work. My son and I have a wellness business, and the Arcturians have given to me a blue light that they send in through the top of my head, comes down to my heart, branches out, and comes out of my hands and fingertips when I'm working on someone, because he and I perform this modality. There's only like a handful of us in the world where we move muscle, bone, tissue, fiber back into its original location, help break up the body's compensation patterns, blah, blah, blah. But I can infuse the body with this blue light so that as we're moving bones, it really doesn't even hurt. So when I think of the Arcturians, I get this sense of stability. I remember being on ships. I remember in dream time, lots of times I'm picked up and taken on ships. I've had beings that show up in my home. Nothing has ever been negative. They've all been very benevolent, very loving, and that's all that I feel is love. And I had mantis beings in my house one night when I woke up, and it was like kind of like the night paralysis. I was fully awake, and I kept thinking, okay, am I just coming back? Are they getting ready to take me? What the heck is going on? And the being just kept looking around the corner edge of the wall and looking at me. But all I felt was just love and peace and relaxation. And then I had this sensation of healing energies flooding my body again. And so I believe that the mantis part has a lot to do with the healing energies that I work with as well. When I think of the Syrians to me are the energy that I'm getting is kind of like this clunk kind of energy, like something is locking into place, like a gear is locking into place. There's a firmness and a sternness and it's like if someone was feeling very insecure, if the Syrian aspect of them was pulled forward, all of a sudden they would have self-confidence and they would be able to motivate through whatever project or issue that they have. The Palladian aspect of me, I do remember being on ships with the Palladians, and I do remember they're, very humanoid looking, very beautiful, long blonde hair, blue eyes. But I was on, I guess like you would say, the helm of the ship, and they were driving it. And I remember talking with them, but I don't recall what that was. But when I was with them, there was like this overpowering sense of just love that was pulling, coming through me. And then to find out that I had lived multiple lifetimes, as these different races, then I was asking Barbara, can I pull all this information through? And what I was told was, as the time is right for me to know, all of these answers are going to be revealed to me. And so right now, I know that I brought in this Arcturian energy with me. I know that I'm working with the ships. I know that I have this energy running through me, and they sustain me. And so also when we were in the collective as our multidimensional self as one, we were working in the Earth's grid system, and we were inputting and infusing unconditional love and energies to help waken humanity. And I believe that those energies have been activated, and I believe that more and more people are waking up. You don't have to be a walk-in order to have a phenomenal spiritual experience. A lot of times people have spiritual experiences just because it's their time to have these experiences. And so I believe that in 2012, when we had the winter solstice, that we had tons of 4D energy that was washing across this planet. Now, still most of us being in third dimensional thought processes at that time is like, well, nothing really happened. This is great. We had wonderful meditations, but there really wasn't this huge shift. But I beg to differ, because I believe that this planet was washed in that 4D energy, helping to wake people up, and that most of us have been operating in that 4D energy. It's easy to get pulled down into the 3D because we have work, we have bills, we have traumas, we have dramas, we have life that gets in the way, and sometimes we drop down into that essence, that real nitty gritty of being, the traumatized human. Other times we're having these wonderful epiphanies. We're having spiritual truths just to flood our body, and we're operating more in that 5D sense. I believe what's happened now is with this last winter solstice that we were totally bathed in 5D energy. I believe that the cellular structure of the human body is beginning to change to where we can hold more light. I believe people are waking up by the hundreds, if not thousands, every day. And I believe that we're going to be able to raise the vibration of this planet to where we are going to be able to shift and to move into that 5D. Now, I believe we are already our light bodies, but we have this denseness about us. And as we continue to do our work, as we continue to, move forward on our path, we are holding more light. So, that's kind of a long answer to a very short question, but I do believe that I am a full integration of all of these things, and more memories are starting to come forward.
Excellent. Sasha, question?
Well, I was interested in getting a little bit of expansion on the Andromedans, and also from Hildegard, because in my work, the Andromedans had called the Council of Hatona, basically to get the warring Draco and humanoid factions on Earth to stop fighting and to work at some kind of a peace. And so that, is this, what are the Andromedans doing to help us, and what are they like? I have the sense that they're trying to bring about peace.
Are you asking me or Hildegard?
I'm asking both of you that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, my feelings about it, first, I'll just say that I do believe that they're brokering peace. I know that the Andromedans have a walk-in program where people basically will volunteer to come to this planet to help anchor in this new vibration, or actually it's an already existing vibration, but we're helping to anchor that onto the planet. And as people begin to shift and as people begin to raise their consciousness, peace will naturally follow.
Thank you.
Debra, did you have any questions? Your turn.
I do. I have two questions and they're for Shelia, and they're kind of not related to each other. I don't know much about walk-ins. I just learned what they were about a year ago. And from what I understood, and maybe I didn't understand your story correctly, I was always under the impressions that walk-ins happened under near-death experience circumstances. But from your story, it sounded like it didn't happen that way. Did I misunderstand your story, or is that correct? And could you explain why you think that happened?
Sure. Walk-ins can happen as a result, yes, of a near-death experience. They also can happen because of a great deal of trauma.
Okay.
There can be an accident. People can be having an operation and under anesthesia when a switch will take place. In my case, I was in a dysfunctional marriage. I'm sure I was a very dysfunctional person myself, but I was very sick. And I was getting sicker. I did everything that Western medicine told me to do, and my health was declining daily. I had 3 small children, but I could not play with them. I had to be on the couch, and they would bring their toys close to me so I could play with them. And then if I was able to get up and to do things, I just found that I was just exhausted. Now, looking back now, knowing what I do, I was in total adrenal failure, and having all of these autoimmune diseases, having bone cancer, the potential of brain tumor. When all of that went away, Western medicine was just like, well, that's interesting. Or, well, we don't know what that was, or we don't know why that happened. Maybe all of our equipment was broken. And I wasn't able to get any answers at all for that. But maybe I did die. I don't know. I know that I was very, very sick. And I know I woke up the next day and, I was alone. And I thought it was a weekend, but it was actually a weekday, and the whole day was gone, and so it took me a while to learn the new eating habits, because I was a fast food junkie, Diet Mountain Dew, chocolate, all the wonderful foods and breads and types of things from, having a Southern cook as a mom, and that was just my lifestyle. So everything for me changed in just an instant.
Now, my second question is about our country is in a very divided, dark place. Do you see that changing in the near future?
I actually think our country's been in a dark place for a long, long time. And now all of a sudden, we're seeing these things, and we're saying and standing up and saying this is not acceptable for the first time. I think that the more light that we shine in the darkness, the more, yuckiness we're going to find. But it's always been there. What's shifted is humanity and their consciousness and their willingness now to stand up and say no more.
Good answer. I passed the talking stick.
Okay, I have a question for both of you about your children. I know, Hildegard, your children were very young when this happened. I guess the same with you, Shelia. Did your children know that Mommy wasn't Mommy anymore? And how did they adapt? And how did they express it and make you aware that they knew that you weren't the same person?
Do you want to go first, Hildegard? Or?
Yeah, let Hildegard go first. We'll go back and forth.
Sure.
Yeah, for me, there was a situation with my 5-year-old when one day he would step up on the kitchen corner bench and yelled at me and said, "Who are you? I want my mommy back."
Wow.
And it really shocked me because I didn't know what to say. And I must admit, I hadn't behaved very nicely because the program of the workaholic perfectionist was running out. And I, was their mommy using the outdoor voice. And that was not nice. And he just felt he had to be eye to eye with me. And because he was very little, he needed to stand up on the bench and come very close to my face and give it to me straight out of the mouth of babes, right? So at that point, I remember running into the powder room and looking in the mirror and asking myself, who are you? And I decided right then and there that I really seriously need to take a look at what was going on with me. And I remember shortly thereafter having a discussion with my husband, with whom I at the time was still living. That was very early on after the walk-in had happened, that I said, you know what, I have a right to be healthy. I have a right to discover what went on with me. I don't know what's going on. I have a very difficult time functioning. And if there is no expert in that direction who can help me, then I have to go into another direction to figure out what's going on. So this is not really the question. The question was, how did your children react? Over time, I never had a discussion with my 5-year-old, let alone the 3-year-old or the younger baby who was a year or something, about this, because these are not things you can discuss with your children. The children had to go then eventually through a divorce with me, because it got to the point that I had to take my kids and run. And that, of course, upset their life dramatically. However, as they were growing older, there was one incident where, so I have 3 sons and a daughter, and my second oldest son, one morning, we already had moved to the country at the time. It was time to get them ready for the school bus. And I'm going into the bedroom and my child is not in his bed. And I'm panicking and I'm running to the front lawn. And there he is, lying on the front lawn. And he said, Mommy, do you know this and that? And he's talking about stars and sky, as if he was like an old astronomer. And then he would grab me and say, I need to go back home, Mommy. I want you to come with me to Mars. And I'm going, what? So by the time you are a scientist and you are, aerospace engineer and you know how to build rockets to go to Mars, you will be a big man and you won't need mommy anymore. And so with this person, I talked a lot more about my walk-in experience. And as the children turned to be teenagers and they brought their friends home from school, high school, girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever, discussions would come up about monsters in closets and, stuff that they can't talk to anybody about, and how it come. I am open to this and they can talk to me about it. I think with them all having gone through university, they have a different worldview, and some of them were even scared for me to say, when I said, well, I have to talk about it. I don't care what people think. I know my experience is true, and I have a right to express authentically who I am. I feel I'm to a degree still in a closet about this walk-in experience, and the time has come to share the story. And it's interesting to see how over the years, they've been encouraging and they've been accepting, some more than others. But I find I'm at a very good spot, because what was not supposed to ever happen is that I see my kids graduate from kindergarten. I was able to do it. I was able to pull it off against all medical prognosis. And I think I was only able to pull it off because of the insights I gained from the walk-in experience. I realized that we human beings are very powerful creators. Our thoughts, our words, and if we align our thoughts, our words, and our action, we then tap into the cosmic force, if I may call it that propels us forward. The things that our logical mind could have never imagined suddenly come about, means and people and circumstances evolve that helped me along. And it happened over and over again, and it's still happening. And I think the children over the years, as they became adults and had to make decisions, they would come to me and say, Mom, what would you suggest? And I always say, well, what is my story always? Do you come from fear or do you come from love? Because false evidence appearing real is what our mind has been conditioned by. And when you trust your heart and you go with what your values are, and I needed to evaluate my value system very early on in life, thank God. What do I value the most? And what I valued the most was human life, the small children in front of me at the time. And I was going to see that mission through no matter what. And having accomplished that is such an exhilarating feeling. And to have adult children now tell me, thank you, Mom. Sorry. It's amazing. It's a big gift I could have ever been given, right? And to now have people in my experiences group, I run weekly experiences group, and have so many people who say, you helped me, it made a difference. To me, that makes my soul sing. And if I may just say in closing, if people think we're living in difficult times and, you know, life is not worth living, or, you know, the life we once had is never coming back, good thing, because better things are coming. Each human being has unique gifts and talents, and you can find them by following your passion. What are you most passionate about? What you value the most? And where your focus goes, energy flows. And as enough people do that, the cosmic grid lightens up, and everything that's not aligned with universal law, everything that is not helpful to the bigger collective greater good, it will eventually fall by the wayside. And I think that's what we want to accomplish here on this planet, especially with this conference that Shelia so brilliantly has organized for us in January.
Okay, do you have something to say, Sash?
Well, we talked about the children, their effects, and I just wonder, you know, and Hildegard, you say your marriage didn't, you had to move on because it didn't work, and I just wonder what happened with Sheila's marriage too.
Yeah, we'll go to Sheila, but I had one last question on your children. You had 3 when you left your marriage. How did you get the 4th child?
Little girl, yeah.
Very good question, because when you need help, God shows you nothing but angels. And a person showed up when I was deadly sick. I was a single mom with 3 little children. There was no mother, no aunt, no neighbor, nobody. And this gentleman showed up in my life who embraced me, 3 children, dog and all. And we decided to spend some time together. And that was the father of my now beautiful daughter. Yeah. Amazing. And there's another story to that, because that childbirth was a home birth. 2 births were medicated and done according to hospital policy. And what really breaks my heart is that pregnancy, labor, and delivery is looked at as a disease. Well, it is not. And you can, even after 2 cesareans, have perfectly normal natural birth with supportive midwife. And it's a super empowering experience. So my daughter was born at home with a midwife. And it's just exhilarating. And I think this is the wisdom of the women of old, who were the medicine women, who were the healers, were the herbalists, who were the people who also nursed people who were old and sick and frail, and, you know, gave them the dignity and an harmonious, loving environment for people to then leave the body behind and go on to the next experience. So to me, it all was amazing. And I will eventually make a movie about it, because I think the story needs to be told. And to do it in a movie is probably even better than just writing it into a book.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to pass the talking stick to Sheila and tell us about how your children.
Yeah, your primary relationship with.
Like how, were they aware that you were gone or your original person was gone and you replaced them? Tell us what happened. And how many children do you have? You had 3, right?
Yes. And so the youngest was 3 years old. That's my son. And the other 2 are daughters, 6 and 12. And so they noticed immediately because all of a sudden their mom could get up off of the couch and play with them. Their mom all of a sudden had the skills and the energy to cook and to play and to do all of these things that I had not had the energy to do. This new mom was very empowered where the other one was disempowered. And so within 3 months, I had packed the children up, found a new place to live, and we were out of the house. So there was so much change going on in their life. I don't think that during the first couple years, other than the health and the vitality, that they really noticed a difference because all of a sudden they were getting this undivided attention from me that I never had to give to them before. But after I moved into the other house, I guess it was like the first month that I was in there, we all started experiencing missing time. And at one point it was 4 hours of missing time. And so, you know, the children have had very unique experience. They're all very gifted. They hear, they see, they know, they have all the clairs. My son Dylan works with me as a healer, and he himself is a walk-in and came in at the age of 7 because he did have a near-death experience. And in the hospital, his appendix had ruptured and he was asymptomatic and he had peritonitis. And so we almost lost him. And in the hospital, this little tiny frail body started speaking in a language that he didn't know. And there was a man's voice coming out. And my husband and I are both convinced that that was his soul at that point crying out to be released. Now, my son talks about being a walk-in, and he actually will be at the conference and is in the book as well. And it's very, very, very rare to have 2 walk-ins in a family, with me coming in as Arcturian and him bringing the angelic component in. And my daughter Caitlin is an animal communicator, although she still tries not to use her gifts in the dog world. She's a dog trainer and works for the ASPCA and different things, but she has these gifts and abilities. So they noticed something, but it was all very, very positive, and it was very traumatic for them. Now, my oldest daughter, I did not tell her until about 5 years ago because I did not know how she would handle it. And the second I told her, she's like, I knew something had happened. I told people there's no way that my mom can change the way that you changed. And she said, thank you for telling me that. And I was like, oh, why didn't I tell her before? But, you know, the time had to be right. Dylan and Caitlin, because they were younger, you know, I told them that I was a walk-in. They've gone and studied with different shamans with me. They've traveled all over the country and gone to various workshops. And so they, when I came in, I basically did a 180 because before I was a very reserved person, went to church, had very limiting belief systems. And then all of a sudden this new mom is out of the box and she's into metaphysics and, you know, she has all these gifts and talents that's coming through. And, because I was a single mom, I just grabbed up those kids and loaded them in the vehicle. And whether we were driving cross country or across town, I always took them with me. And so our relationship was really, really strengthened, because they really didn't have that good of a quality. They had love, but they didn't have a quality of relationship where I couldn't, you know, I just didn't have the strength to play with them. And so as they've gotten older, you know, okay, yeah, my mom's a walk-in. It's just, you know, it's just normal. Most people that come to see us are of like mind, and there's a few people that have come that left quicker than we thought just because of, the various conversations that we have. And so, the abnormal is very normal in our home.
Has any of the children expressed any, they missed the first one? Like, especially the older one. She had a relationship for 12 years before you came in.
No.
Did she ever express what happened?
They're all very glad because apparently, before I was very grumpy because I was in pain all the time and I was going to the doctor and I was staying in the bed, and it wasn't a very pleasant situation for them. My health was actually impacting the relationship that I had with the children. And afterwards, that was removed. And so we had a much, much better relationship. I was very lucky.
Now, have you ever been contacted by the one that left?
No. I have felt some of the presence, especially when I was doing some ancestral healing work on myself. I really felt the presence strongly, but I feel like I've been guarded and protected the entire time that I have been here, and my relationship with my guides is so much that I just talk out loud to them the same way I'm talking to you. And my husband sometimes will say, "Are you talking to me? Are you talking to your guides? Are you talking to the plants? Are you talking to the crystal? Who are you talking to?" And so they really work through me. And I try to be as much as a conduit as possible. And I just allow them to move me. If they told me tomorrow, okay, you've got to up and sell your business and you're moving across the country, guess what would happen? I would up and sell my business and move across the country because I just have that strong of a relationship and that much of a belief in them.
Wow. Any questions, Sash?
I hear the answer to my question. You have a spouse that accepts you the way you are and is not freaked out by who you are now.
No, absolutely not. He and I met 4 years after the divorce, and we met at a meeting. I had already visioned him, and he started showing up in some of my meditations, and I'm like, "Get out of here. Who are you? Just get out." And his energy is like, "Whoa, this is so cool. Am I going to remember this? Blah, blah, blah." And so I would have my friends trying to journey also with me. It's like, "Okay, find out who that person is. Help me figure this out." And then after a while, we just sort of let it go by. But his spirit started visiting me before we ever met each other. And he was so strong of a presence in my home that I would feel him come up behind me and he would kiss me on the back of my neck. And that's something that he does all the time now. But his spirit actually did that, and it would freak me out, and I'd turn around. Nobody was there. I looked out the window. I saw him rolling down the hill with my son. Freaked me out. Ran outside, and Dylan's like, "Mom, there's nobody rolling down the hill with me." I was sitting on the couch with my daughter. His energy walks through the door, comes and sits down beside me, puts his arm around me, and gives my daughter a noogie. And I jumped, I grabbed her, jerked her off the couch. Well, she was deeply unimpressed. And I'm like, "Oh, I thought there was something in your hair." But he was so strong that I actually called my teacher to come to the house and to do an exorcism or a blessing. And she said, "Honey, there's nothing here. There's a dog, there's a German Shepherd and a ball." Well, the German Shepherd was actually his dog that had passed, and he had come to watch over us until we met. And when I met my husband, the first thing, we're at a meeting, I'm talking about my kids and I'm talking about seeing auras and, everything. And he's not looking at me like I'm crazy, because it's like, okay, if when I meet someone, I am just me. There's no pretense about it. I'm just who I am. And so we were talking about all these spiritual things, and it felt so good to be able to openly talk with someone. And So less than 6 weeks, he came to visit me. I was living in Kentucky at the time. He came to visit me in Kentucky, and less than a year later, we were married. And when we got married, we did a Native American ceremony, and part of that was a wedding blanket. And then unbeknownst to me, when it came time to put the wedding blanket around the two of us, he called the kids to come up, and he actually married them as well. And so we've always had this really cool, strong bond. I have no doubt that, these are his spirit children. And we just, talking like we're talking tonight is just common conversation in our household. We're open to spirit. He has his own path that he walks, and he does his things, and I do my things. And, we support each other, and it's just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
That's great. I want to go back. We're running out of time here, but let's have Hildegard. What would you like our listeners to know about you that we haven't covered?
Well, I would like to connect to what Sheila was saying earlier about what is coming. And I learned from the Andromedans when I was journaling ferociously way back when, what's going on? And somebody should tell me, and I want to know. And I was told, Sheila, address that. There's a walk-in program. Why? What's going on? When humanity was given technology for which we were not spiritually mature enough, call it the nuclear bomb, the impact of the tests, and then obviously when they were dropped various places on the planet, everything being connected, indigenous cultures say, the web of life, we are all interconnected, and that's the premise is that everything is energy. Nothing is material. What we can see with our three-dimensional eyes is just the lowest vibrational aspect of all there is. So when something happens on the planet, it is felt wherever. We are not even conscious of wherever is, but it impacts regardless. Much like every thought I have, every action I take, the ripples can be felt. And so other dimensional intelligences said, the kids are lighting the playpen on fire. We need to do something about it. And my communication with the A's always are in relationship to children. Why? Because when you look at evolution of consciousness, you will not give a little 2-year-old the car keys and say, drive down the block to get milk either. So they use these children analogies for me to understand the bigger cosmic picture. And it's that we as a species who are embodied now have responsibility for this planet. And we have been hijacked. Our consciousness has been hijacked. And we have been altered and manipulated. And there were various factions on this planet playing their game. And there were contracts made. And in those contracts, there were exchanges promised, deals made. And one of them was technology, for which we weren't ready at the time, to then give in turn human material, whether it is DNA or whatever, human trade even, to off-planet or other dimensional intelligence. And a lot of pain and suffering has occurred, not just here, but out and beyond the planet. And so, due to the law of non-interference, an evolving species needs to evolve at their own time and speed. The walk-in program was created, and apparently it's not a new thing. It happened over and over again, but in this case, in the 40s, from various star systems or various dimensions, people volunteered, or let's say souls volunteered to incarnate on this planet, take on physical form, and as Sheila said, there was a soul in this body that only needed the first 33 years in this body. And then this new software came in, and hopefully in a little bit of time it would hit the ground running. And so it happened. And the whole idea behind it is that when you have, the lighthouse in the darkness, may the light be ever so small, it inspires another light. Ships along the dark ocean or along a coastline, there's one light, they go from one lighthouse to the next, get the signals before there was radar or whatever. Today we could say from one radar ping to the next. And this is what the walk-in programs were for. And there are many people who have experiences they may not have spoken about. And my message would be, listen, trust your inner guidance, open yourself, ask questions. I want to know. For me, I took pen to paper and said, hey, whoever has something to say, I'm just writing it down. Person 1. And I gave these voices or these inputs a name and pretended they're human beings. And then after a while, I would read over it. Did it make sense to me? Does it feel good tomorrow? Great. If not, I discard it. And I think we as human beings going through a phase of becoming not just galactic beings, but intergalactic beings. And technology can be used to benefit us rather than hinder us and weaken us as a human family. And on this conference, I will talk about how you create your universe your way, living guided from within. Because I think right now, what all of the last year, let's say, has forced us to do, to deal with ourselves. We are locked in our homes maybe and have very limited interaction with one another. And it's a perfect opportunity to just get to know you. Because no matter what text you look at, me having been raised in the Catholic Church, there was this passage where it said, know yourself and all the knowledge of the universe will be given unto you. And that message is more true to me today than ever, because the more time I'm spending on getting to know what makes me tick, understanding how my soul communicates. Sheila said it so beautifully about, how she feels the different aspects coming in. They feel different in the body. And I understand when we suppress our feelings for a long time, to suddenly feel the first things come up is pain. And then we suppress it because we don't want to feel pain. And there is a stage in life where we have to go to this dark night of the soul. But at the other end, my God, there is not just light at the end of the tunnel, but there is a joy to it and an awareness about the beauty. You have new eyes to behold life with. And I wouldn't want to change anything in my life because of that. And I would like to share this with others.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a quick question before we go back to Sheila. What about disclosure? Do you have any information? Is that going to happen anytime soon?
I think it has been happening for a long time already. It's disclosed to each and everybody at their own time and based on their level of awareness. And as Sheila said earlier, for whatever we can handle and integrate, because our nervous system can handle only that much. If right now all the technology, let's call it spaceships for lack of a better term, would land at the airports or wherever, the cognitive dissonance that would happen in people's brain would be terrible. So I think disclosure is happening very slowly. Look at movies, look at even the American military at some point say, well, now we need to report on UFO sightings. Something that was classified for the last 70 years is now gradually being released. We have people like Paul Hellyer, the former defense minister of Canada, going on public conferences and on YouTube and writing books about what's at odds on the planet and how it could be fixed, whether it's a monetary system or the whole political structures. Disclosure is happening. But I don't think it's going to be that some politician, no matter what country, will go and say, oh, guess what? There's life somewhere else. I personally don't think.
I wondered if you had any info that there might be like a mass of, viewing of ships all showing themselves all over the world all at once, that type of thing. But I wanted the last few minutes to Shelia so she can answer the same question and tell us more about the event coming up. So thank you very much, Hildegard. We're running out of time. Go ahead, Shelia. Take it and wrap it up.
Okay.
To the end.
Yes. If the listeners have enjoyed anything that they heard tonight, they're going to be ecstatic with this conference that we have coming up, because we have 22 speakers. We have everyone from like Barbara Lamb. We have Rebecca Hardcastle Wright. We have Mary Rodwell and Marilyn Harper. Of course, Hildegard and myself. We have Emma Louise Livingsoul, Jacqueline Smith, Dylan Cusco. We have Robert McMahon, Nicole Richmond, Don Clark. We have Yvonne Perry, Jeremy Lecron, who is my spiritual teacher and leader still, and I'm a apprentice to her still. We have Andrea Purin, Darlene Vandergriff, Gail Mack, Maya Nartumid, Rob Gauthier, Maya Christabel, Alan Steinfeld, and of course Neil Garr. And I believe that there will be so much that's shared, that the vibrancy and the synergy that is created by the speakers is really going to help to waken people up. Now, as far as disclosure, I believe we are the disclosure. Just as Hildegard said, we are all just one. I know that in, I think it was Italy, I was part of the IXO group, and I was actually trying to scan through my text to make sure I had this right, but I can't find it right now. But I believe it was Italy actually went on record of saying that they had had encounters with unidentified flying objects and had developed partnerships with extraterrestrials. And there is more and more information that's coming out. This year alone, we have had more articles released. NASA has shared more photography. People are talking more about UFOs and having UFO sightings than ever before. Maybe it was because people were at home. I don't know. But people are really talking about the unusual sights that they're seeing. I believe that this year we're going to have massive information dumps to come to us. Whether we see the ships or not, I don't know. I've seen ships. I have some phenomenal photographs of ships. And I mean, there is no doubt that people look at that and they're like, oh yeah, that's a ship, that's craft. And so I think that as we raise our vibration as a species, we're going to be able to see the crafts more and more because they operate at a different density or a different dimension. And as we raise up to that frequency, we can see them. I laugh sometimes and say, if we could look into the other dimensions and see what was out in the sky right now, it would probably look like a superhighway. But we're just not there yet. But as a species, we're getting there. And I believe that this year it's going to be a game changer.
Okay, Sasha, question for your 2 minutes.
I have only an observation from Leach and others that say our fears that people will go nuts about disclosure is unfounded. It was staged for Roosevelt, who wanted to have full disclosure, and they staged this little panic on purpose so that Roosevelt said, "Hey, we better keep this quiet, or people." But it's nonsense. We're able to handle it. We've been watching Star Trek for years.
Right. That's
so
right.
How do they register? We have about 30 seconds. How do they register register for this conference
Yes.
than last time?
Please go to portaltoascension.org and you can register on the home page. Just scroll down and you will see Walk-Ins, the Cosmology of the Soul 3-day online conference. It's only $88. You can watch it as many times as you want, share it. You don't have to watch it the 8th, 9th, and 10th, but if you can join us, we'd love to have you.
That sounds great. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming on today. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Sasha. Thank you, Debra. Thank you, Sheila and Hildegard. And thank you, everybody. Have a happy new year. We'll see you 2021. Aloha.
Thank you. Aloha.
Thank you. Aloha.
Thank you.